everybody, it's Mrs. Mancuso, and today I'm going to go through the January 2019 Regents Chemistry exam. So pause the video right now if you don't already have this printed out. Print out the exam from the New York State website. So you just punch in your browser New York State Regents Chemistry exams and you choose January 2019 and you print out the exam so that we can go through this together. All right, first question. The results of the gold foil experiment led to the conclusion that an atom is. So I like to think about my answer before I look at all of their choices. So I remember the gold foil, Rutherford was our guy. He was firing alpha particles at gold foil and most of them went straight through. So that proved that most of an atom is empty space. But then every once in a while it would hit something and deflect off. So he discovered the nucleus and he figured out they have to be pretty small because it almost never hit something and deflected. He also figured out that it must be dense because it had enough to bounce back. And it also had to be positive because the alpha particles were positive. And so if it was positive and negative, they would attract each other. But since it bounced back, it must be the same charge. So mostly empty space and has a small negative nucleus. Nope, nucleus is positive. Mostly empty space and small positive nucleus. There's our answer. Atoms are neutral. So neutral means that they have no charge. And that's because the protons are positive and the electrons are negative and they're equal to each other. So protons equals neutrons? No. Protons equals electrons? Yes. In the ground state, valence electrons of krypton are found in. All right, valence are our outermost electrons. So no matter what the atom, they're not going to be in the first shell, they're going to be in the outermost shell. Next one, according to the wave mechanical model of the atom, electrons are located in. So where do you find electrons? You find them in orbitals. You find them around the nucleus. Which electron configuration represents the electrons in an atom of sodium in the ground state? So I just grab my reference table and I go to the periodic table and I go to sodium, and underneath sodium it says 2-8-1. So I find it, 281. That's what it is. The next one, the elements on the periodic table of elements are arranged in order of. So here they are, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they are in order of atomic number. Which element is malleable? Malleable means I want a metal. Metals are malleable. The metals are left of the staircase, so I want to pick something that's over here. So chlorine is to the right, copper is a metal. At 298 K and 1 atmosphere, which noble gas has the lowest density? Now there's two ways you could solve this one. First of all, the lightest is going to be up here at the top, and as you go down, they are going to be heavier. So neon is here, krypton is here, xenon is here, and Rn is here. So I want to pick neon because it's closest to the top. If you are not sure though, you could go right here to the density and look them all up and find the value that's the lowest, which would be neon. All right, which two terms represent types of chemical formulas? Not reaction. How can I write a formula? So a formula is like C6H12O6. So empirical formula, molecular formula, yes, those are both formulas. Polar and nonpolar are types of covalent bonds. Synthesis and decomposition are types of reactions. Saturated and concentrated are types of solutions. So those were my types of formulas. Which quantities are conserved in a chemical reaction? Every time I see that word, I think balanced. So charge, pressure, pressure is not balanced. And so if I know pressure is not balanced, boom, there goes 3 of my answers. Charge, mass, and energy. I know those balance out on the two sides of my equation. Which term represents the sum of the atomic masses in a molecule? So like if I had a molecule of water, I would go find the gram formula mass, and that would be the sum of all the atoms within the molecule. So there it is, formula mass. All right, next one. Which equation represents energy being absorbed as a bond is broken? So I know some of you right away think of that saying barf, broken, absorbed, released, formed. So I want to break one. So 1 is building, 2 is building, 3 and 4 are both breaking. And absorbed means energy has to go in. So I choose choice 4. 13, which term is used to describe the attraction that an oxygen has for the electrons in a bond? So this is really a definition question. And the attraction, the ability of an atom to attract electrons, that is called its electronegativity. 14, which substance cannot be decomposed by chemical means? If you can't decompose it, it's got to be an element. So it's got to be something on here. So carbon. A beaker contains a dilute sodium chloride solution at 1 atmosphere. What happens to the number of solute particles in the solution and the boiling point of the solution as more sodium chloride is dissolved? So I have this beaker and I'm adding salt to it. So as I add it, I'm going to have more and more salt ions. And I always tell my class, like, if this is 0 and this is 100, here is my normal freezing and here is my normal boiling. And if I add something that actually dissolves in water, it does this. I go, whoop. The freezing point goes lower, the boiling point goes higher. So let me see which one works out. The number of solute particles increase, yes, and the boiling point increases. There we go, choice 1. Which form of energy is transferred when an ice cube is placed in a beaker of water at 50 degrees? So I'm transferring heat energy. Heat energy is thermal. The average kinetic energy. As soon as I see kinetic energy, I'm always thinking of temperature. So the average kinetic energy of the particles in a sample is expressed as, oh, they're actually just asking me for temperature. At STP, which gas sample has the same number of molecules as 2 liters? If I have 2 containers and they're both at STP, I need to have 2 liters and 2 liters in order to have the same number of molecules. So I choose the answer that also has 2 liters. Which phrase describes this change? All right, I am changing from a solid to a gas. So if you think of your graph, here it is as a solid, here it is melting, and then here it is as a liquid, and here it's boiling, and here it is as a gas. So over here is my kinetic energy or my temperature. I have to add heat in. When you add heat, you are definitely talking about endo. And I'm going from I2 to I2, and so it is not changing composition, so it is not chemical. So I want to cross off the chemicals, and I want to cross off the exo. I want to pick it's an endothermic because heat is going in, and it's a physical change because I have the same substance before and after the arrow. Which term identifies a factor that will shift a chemical equilibrium? So things that shift equilibrium are concentration, temperature, and pressure. Those are the 3 factors that can alter equilibrium. So I go find it, temperature. According to which theory or law is a chemical reaction most likely to occur when 2 particles with the proper energy and orientation interact with each other? So I like to do this as a high five. If you're going to high five somebody, you have to have just the right orientation and energy. If I did it like this, oh, that's lame. So not a high five. Or if it was really slow, that's not a good high five either. So it's called the collision theory. Molecules must collide with the proper energy and orientation. Addition of a catalyst can speed up a reaction by providing an alternate reaction pathway that has. All right, I want you to think about this graph. If this is my endothermic reaction and I added a catalyst to it and you had to do a dotted line for it, you would start at the exact same spot, you would go up, but you would finish sooner. You wouldn't go up as high. So this was my original activation energy to here. And now my activation energy has been lowered. So I would have a lower activation energy because of a catalyst. Basically, I'm making the molecules collide in a faster way, so it takes less energy to make them collide. All right, which one is saturated? Saturated means that it has all single carbon-carbon bonds. And so you could go to your hydrocarbons. Right here, table Q. Here's your homologous series of hydrocarbons. This is the only one that's saturated because it's the only one with single bonds, and the names end in -ane. So I want to choose the one that ends in -ane. All right, an alcohol and an ether have the same molecular formula, C2H6O. These two compounds have. So if you have an alcohol and an ether, you could look right here on the next table. An alcohol is going to have an OH functional group, and ether is going to have an oxygen in the middle of your carbon chain. So they are definitely going to have different functional groups and same physical and chemical properties. Well, if one has an OH and one has an O in the middle, they're different structures. Different structures will always give you different properties. All right, which metal is most easily oxidized? I want to go to table J. My table J gives me my activity series. So the higher up, the more active, and the lower down, the less active. So I want to find which one is highest. AG is way down here. CO is right there. Cu is down here, and Mg is the highest of the four. So because it is the highest, it's the most easily oxidized, which means it's going to lose electrons the easiest. Which substance is an Arrhenius acid? So when I'm asked about an acid is always an H plus donor, and I know I can go to table K because table K lists the acids. So HCl, HCl. There we go. Sometimes it's not exactly on here, but it might be like HBr or HI. So you see the general formula that they have and you match it here. Which statement describes an electrolyte? Well, electrolyte makes you think of like Gatorade. You have a solution and the solution is able to conduct electricity because it has mobile charged ions. So an electrolyte conducts an electric current as a solid? Nope. An electrolyte conducts an electric current as a solid? Nope. When an electrolyte dissolves in water, the resulting solution conducts a current. Yes, there we go. 28. Which type of reaction occurs when an acid reacts with a base to form a salt in water? That's a titration lab, and what you're doing is neutralizing it. If you take an acid and a base, you should come out somewhere near neutral. Compared to the energy release per mole of reactant during a chemical reaction, the energy release per mole of reactant during a nuclear reaction is going to be much greater. So you can have a tiny little pellet of uranium, and by doing fission reactions, create as much energy as a ton of coal. So you're able to get much more energy from nuclear reactants. Which phrase describes a risk of using the radioisotope cobalt-60 in treating cancer? So a risk in using radioisotopes. It's not about acid rain, it's not about greenhouse gases, and it's not about ozone depletion. But sometimes the radiation that is emitted could alter DNA sequences, so that's biological exposure. All right, join the next video to continue on to part B.